welcome to Healthy Living on the Voice of America. I'm Lenore Moudou. Today we bring you the second part of our special on autism. 2 weeks ago we introduced you to 2 mothers whose children are autistic. Today we'll speak with 2 experts who have experience working with autistic children and who can provide more information for all of you who sent us questions about the condition. But first, we start with our AIDS Corner as we look at a new development to help some HIV patients get easier access to treatment. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton announced recently a deal with 2 generic drug companies to provide AIDS drugs at reduced prices to patients in developing countries. Voice of America's Caroline Weaver has the story.
At the New York headquarters of the William J. Clinton Foundation, the former president announced major price reductions for more than a dozen AIDS drug formulations. Next to Mr. Clinton on the platform were the French ambassador to the U.S., the chairman of Matrix, an Indian drug company, and the health ministers of Kenya and Thailand.
When we started this endeavor at our foundation about 5 years ago, we made a promise to people living with HIV. Once you're on treatment, we'll keep the medicines coming and make sure that everyone else who needs them has access. In providing treatment in developing countries, the standard and quality of care would be no different than what we expect in places like the United States. Looking ahead, there are some very stiff challenges to fulfilling this commitment. The so-called second-line drugs, which a small minority of patients need as they develop drug resistance to the initial medications, are even more expensive, about 10 times the price of today's first-line combination. That's a very great strain on countries' healthcare budgets. Our announcement today responds directly to these challenges and sets the foundation not only for treatment to many more people, but treatment that is more equitable, more affordable, and more effective. First, we announced initial price reductions for second-line medicines that will generate average savings of 25% in low-income nations and up to 50% below the price now available in middle-income nations. This has been made possible by Unitaid, with whom my foundation is partnering in a $100 million program that will begin buying these medicines at the new prices this July. We're also announcing, in partnership with our suppliers, Matrix and Cipla, uniform pricing for all these drugs across countries in my foundation's buying club, which now stretches across 66 nations from Peru to Papua New Guinea. Second, less than a year after the launch of an AIDS treatment that is 1 pill once a day, which is so much easier for people to take, we're announcing a price of less than $1 a day for developing countries. This drug represents the best chance that science has to offer, and we're announcing this price to help national governments plan for the use of the product in the future.
One of the ways that the AIDS drug program is being paid for is through special taxes on air travelers in several countries. Kenyan Health Minister Charity Ngilu.
This initiative will mean that we will be able to put more people on treatment. We have already 130,000 people on treatment. We should be putting at least 250,000 on treatment, meaning that there are eligible 120,000 people who are not on treatment. Some of them already should be on second line. The drugs are not affordable for most people. But in the last 2 years, I can say, we have scaled up. We never imagined that all those people who are on treatment today could be on treatment until actually Clinton Foundation came to Nairobi. We signed a memorandum of understanding with them, and they say that yes, we are going to help you treat children and treat also adults.
Caroline Weaver, VOA News, New York.
Thanks, Caroline, for this report. Moving now to autism, a new survey in the United States indicates that approximately 1 in every 150 children in the country has autism, suggesting the condition may be more common than previously thought. Earlier studies had placed the prevalence of autism at 1 in 160 American children. Voice of America's Paul Cisco has more.
The survey of children with autism is the largest and most comprehensive ever undertaken. It shows that about 560,000 children in the United States have the condition. Wendy Stone's child is one of them.
I'm hoping that 1 in 150 is alarming enough to the government and to our healthcare providers for them to pay a lot of attention to it.
Autism is a little understood neurological and behavior syndrome that interferes with the child's ability to relate or interact with others. Many of its victims are withdrawn and have difficulty speaking. The new survey by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is not a nationwide study, but based on data from only 14 states. Still, many in the medical community and among support groups found the numbers staggering. Lee Grossman is with the Autism Society of America.
It actually validates what we've been saying all along, that the numbers of people being diagnosed with autism is much higher than had what previously been stated.
The U.S. Congress recently allocated $945 million to learn more about the condition.
We need to now go back to Congress and to the agencies to ask for more services for this growing population.
More money on research is needed because very little is known about possible risk factors for autism, what causes it, or even how to recognize it biologically. It is known that if an autistic child is identified before the age of 3, intervention is much more effective. Paul Sisko, VOA News.
Thank you, Paul. Autism is also prevalent in Africa, and joining me from Johannesburg, South Africa, is Dr. Lorna Barbara Jacqueline, a pediatrician at the Memorial Institute for Child Health and Development in Johannesburg. Dr. Jacqueline, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us by phone. And also joining us from the Midwest U.S. city of Phoenix, Arizona by phone is Neepa Sevak, a homeopathic practitioner who sits on the board of international affairs at the American Medical College of Homeopathy located in Phoenix. Ms. Sevak, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Lenore.
Let me start with you, Dr. Jacqueline. In my research, of course, I read that autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. How can we simply describe this condition and understand it?
Autism is a behavioral problem, primarily. These children, although they're delayed in various aspects of development, if you look at them and you do a neurological examination, they're totally normal, and it's really the behavior that is unusual. They lack communication skills is the main problem, and then they also show unusual repetitive behavior and a lack of capacity to play in a creative way. So it's really their behavior that shows that they're different to other children, and the main problem that we deal with is the inability to communicate, both receive communication and to put out communication, which impedes their behavior most significantly.
So basically, the behavior is one of the ways that we determine if a child is autistic. Let me go to you, Ms. Sevak. You are a homeopathic practitioner with experience working with autistic children. Is there a specific way in homeopathy to diagnose autism?
Yes, absolutely. Homeopathic treatment of autism is what we call in our homeopathic term is constitutional, which is like a holistic approach. It believes in the concept of treating the whole person. So what the history taking that we take, it takes into account the patient's mental, emotional, and the physical attributes. It's more considered as a mind and body process.
As far as the diagnosis is concerned, how do you proceed?
For the diagnosis, what we would do is it's done in an in-office interview, which lasts for like 1 to 2 hours, where I understand the aspects of the child, their minute details verbally or non-verbally, ask many questions, observations about the child's sleeping, eating habits, temperament, personality, behavior with other children, or, behavior to changes in routine, how the parents behave with them, the relationship between the child and the parent, mother's pregnancy history. When all of this is put together, it brings it gives a complete constitutional picture, which makes it easy to come to a diagnosis and to get the treatment.
Let's talk about treatment. Dr. Jacqueline, can we say there is effective treatment in treating children with autism, considering it's a spectrum disorder, so every child has a specific need? How do we approach treatment?
Absolutely. And not just a specific need. Obviously, there are many different causes for autism. So one's got to not just look at the causes, what's the underlying cause, but also the wide variability in the spectrum of the behavior. So I think that there's a big overlap with the way the homeopathic approach and the medical approach, because one's looking at targeting the behavior, and then really largely it's about behavioral modification. That will be the way people around the child interact with the child and help the child to behave in a more appropriate way. The children are not identical, because if you say the child's got autistic spectrum disorder, children are very, very different. We have a little school where I work with children who are autistic, and they're very different. And some children are highly intelligent and highly functional, whereas other children are severely learning disabled and much less functional. So one has to really look at every single child. What is the etiology in that child? What is the specific behavioral profile in the child? Are there associated medical problems such as epilepsy or allergies or different problems? So you really have to do a specific program for every single child you see. And we know that there's quite a large genetic predisposition to the condition, so one's got to look at the family and the extended family as well.
So, Dr. Jacqueline, if I understand it correctly, you talk about behavior modification with regards to treating a child with autism.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
And a lot of behavior modification is working with the parents. So I'd agree with that. It is a holistic approach. One has to be very holistic in the management of these children.
Okay, great. We'll take a short break. When we return, Ms. Sevak, I will go to you so you can give us more details as far as how you approach treating a child with autism. So don't go away. We'll be right back to continue this conversation.
Hi, this is Janet Jackson, and you're watching The Voice of America.
What up? This is Ludacris, and this is Voice of America.
And 5, 4, 3, 2.
Straight Talk Africa is about empowerment. It's about empowering people. It's a mirror.
How do you go about these transitions? Because in the way that you have been governing? Are you the interpreters of the Constitution of Nigeria? Why should we believe what you are telling us?
When those calls come in, people have the power to set the agenda. That is what Straight Talk Africa is all about. Don't go away.
Write to us. Our address is Healthy Living, VOA TV2 Africa, 330 Independence Avenue Southwest, Suite 1728, Washington, D.C. 20237, USA. Our email address is africatv@voanews.com. And our website address is www.voanews.com/TV2Africa.
Welcome back to Healthy Living on the Voice of America. I'm Lenore Moudou. We continue our discussion on autism as we look at two different approaches to addressing the condition. My guests are medical doctor Lorna Jacqueline, who is joining us from Johannesburg, South Africa, and homeopathic practitioner Neepa Sevak, who is joining us from Phoenix, Arizona. And Ms. Sevak, let me go to you. You talked about the holistic approach in treating autism. Can you give us a little more detail on that?
Yeah, what it means is that, you know, each of us have our own, each of us have our own individual personality. And homeopathy considers a patient with a mind and body process where each child's personality traits are very important as their physical symptoms. So taking into account their diet, their lifestyle, their personality, surroundings, and emotional factors, when all of this is put together, that is what makes the genetic makeup of the child. And a treatment based on that is what can actually lead to the cure.
And we've noticed that with the report we saw right before this interview that the numbers are rising with regards to autistic children. Dr. Jacqueline, is this a reality in South Africa or the whole of Africa? Are there more children that are autistic now than there were maybe 10 or 20 years ago?
That's always a difficult question to answer, but certainly the research I've just completed in the clinic I work at shows that there's been a 10-fold rise over the last 10 years in children that we're seeing. So we're certainly seeing many children. I see new cases every day, so it's common. I think one's always got to remember that the awareness has increased. So detection has increased, which will play a role in what we're seeing. But I do actually believe that there's an absolute increase in the number of children as well. So I think it's a composite of increased awareness, increased detection, and an absolute increase in the condition.
Ms. Sevak, can you respond to this question? Do you see more autistic children now as there were maybe 10 years ago? Ms. Sevak, are you there? Okay, let me come back to you, Dr. Jacqueline. Tell us about the reality on the ground in Johannesburg and the whole of South Africa and even Africa, if you may, about the way autism is being addressed on the continent.
Okay. Well, Johannesburg is probably a little bit different to other areas because it's quite a well-developed area with a well-resourced area. So there are a number of services developing, but unfortunately many more for the privileged than for the non-privileged community, which is sad. And the less privileged the society and the community, the less facilities there are. So although there are services in the bigger centres, in the smaller centres there are no services available at the moment. And as you're going to the countries surrounding South Africa, there's very, very little available, so that we have people coming to us from Zambia and Mozambique and Swaziland, where so we actually using the resources that we're developing in South Africa and largely in Johannesburg. So there's a big need for us developing services throughout Southern Africa, and I don't know that we extend into further north, but there's a tremendous need for the development of services. I know there are services developing in Kenya. So there are other countries around us that are also developing services, which is nice to see. But we need to be working together and networking and really developing a uniquely African solution to the problem. We find that that the imported programs are not always relevant to our local community. They're far too expensive. They're far too labor intensive. Another problem that we also deal with is that people who come and train in Africa expect to be paid, which is reasonable, but it's very expensive to bring in experts from other countries.
Okay. Let me go to you, Ms. Sevak. I think we lost you just for a second. I read on your website, and I quote, if autism is inherited due to a vaccine reaction or a toxin, then homeopathic remedies will help with detoxification by promoting the immune system, end quote. How do you proceed with detoxification?
Homeopathic remedies, what we describe as are designer medicines, and they are specially designed for individuals based upon their unique state of being. So this process, I would say, is like a mystery where in the homeopathic, detective attempts are to discover where the flow of energy in the body is blocked or impeded. And the homeopath's goal is not only to remove the symptoms, but also to eliminate the essential problem by stimulating the body's natural curative powers. And that's what the homeopathic remedies work by, stimulating the natural process of the body to eliminate, to cleanse itself of the poisons, which could be environmental pollution, the mercury in the vaccine, or substance abuse, any allergens, or anything that might have caused it.
And that leads me to something that I wanted to discuss with the both of you, and I would have your opinion on this. The impact of vaccine on autism, on provoking autism in a child. I've read so many times about the fact that vaccine was causing autism in some children. Dr. Jacqueline, let me go to you. Can you comment on that?
I know about the initial research, and the initial researcher has actually rejected his own research. There's been extensive research, because that's a very dangerous thing to say, is that the vaccine is causing autism, and there's been extensive research that has totally disproven the original theory. So there is no evidence that vaccines cause autism, and it's a very, very dangerous thing to be saying, because it can land up in epidemics of diseases that are going to kill children. So I think that that's very dangerous.
And Ms. Sevak, let me have your comment on that, the effect of some vaccine in children leading to autism.
Well, what I think is, the neurological damage that is very characteristic with autism is similar to the side effects of mercury, aluminum, and, certain toxicities of that. And these neurotoxins are common vaccine ingredients. So that is why people would link it with autism. I mean, that autism is due to vaccines, but I agree with the doctor that, yeah, it is dangerous because there is no such evidence. And because of the signs that start appearing, or when the parents start noticing, is around the same time as, most of the vaccines are given, around 12 to 15-month-old children. So that is why people just link it with the vaccines, but I would not, see a direct connection with it.
But I've spoken with some parents who were convinced that the vaccine was the reason their child has developed the condition. So what do we say to them to change that way of thinking? What is being done, Dr. Jacqueline?
I must just comment that I met such a parent who was convinced, and then when I sat down and listened to the bigger story, her other children also had problems, and there was clearly a genetic problem within the family, which she was, it's sometimes easy to have a reason. And it's possible that if a child has got a very strong genetic predisposition, that something may tip the scales in that particular child. But really looking at big studies, and they've studied this extensively, they've been unable to link this. And that's all one can say to parents, that doctors have gone out to really look at it, because we have to be sure that with vaccination we're not damaging children, and that we're actually stopping them from getting ill. And I think that's the answer.
And Ms. Sevak, what is your reaction to that? Because the quote that I read earlier talked about vaccine and the link to autism. So I'm trying to understand correctly. Are you saying that there is no clear evidence or research that have proven the link between the two?
That is absolutely right. There is no evidence which has proven that vaccines are a cause of autism. Like I said, it's, most autism symptoms are very similar to mercury poisoning symptoms, and mercury is one of the content in the vaccine, so people try to link to it, but it has not been proven.
Okay. Ms. Jacqueline, let me go to you and tell us about what a parent should do in the context, in the African context, where you even said yourself earlier, it is a little bit challenging in some areas. If a parent sees the symptoms and he thinks that a child has autism, what should he do?
Well, I think that the diagnosis is important because parents walk around. Many of our children that we see, the behavior is because the parents can't cope with the child. And once the parents are even given a fairly simplistic behavior management program, it's amazing how well the children do. I've seen dramatic responses where the parents are being supported and are just given guidance on how to handle the child. And in the absence of better facilities, that's a starter. We do need to stand together as a community and start demanding from the government that there's intervention, that there's special nursery schools, that the schools understand the problem. So that's really forming pressure groups to make the government provide facilities and support for these children.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jacqueline, for joining us today from Johannesburg. Ms. Sevak, thank you so much for enlightening us on homeopathy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, for more information about autism, you can go on to the website, to the Autism South Africa, and the web address is www.autismsouthafrica.org. You can also call them at 0011 464 484-9909. In Namibia, the phone number is 092-6461-224561. And in Central or Western Africa, you can contact the Orchid Center in Cameroon. The country code is 237-347-8048. And the number also is 678-7497. And these are some of the resources. You can always write to us if you want more information. And that was Healthy Living for today. I'm Lenore Moudou, and if you need more information, log on to our website at www.voanews.com TV2 Africa and click on the link to Healthy Living. Take care of yourself.